The lecture hall was cold. It was always cold in Galactic Academy Station Kepler 7. Daewon sat in the middle row, his notebook open on the desk in front of him. Around him, students from 47 different species whispered and clicked and hummed in their various languages. The air smelled like recycled oxygen and something sharp that came from the Centaurian cleaning supplies. Professor Halmix stood at the front of the room. He was tall and thin, with 6 fingers on each hand and skin that looked like polished stone. His voice echoed through the translation devices that everyone wore in their ears. "Today we continue our study of Class 4 predators," the professor said. "These species are among the most dangerous in known space. Their hunting instincts are strong. Their bodies are built for killing. This is why we must understand them, so we can protect ourselves." Behind him, a massive cage sat on the demonstration platform. Inside the cage was Velthar. He was huge, easily 3 meters tall even when sitting. His body was covered in dark scales that shifted between green and black. 4 arms were folded against his torso, each ending in claws that could tear through steel. Blue patterns glowed faintly along his neck and shoulders. His eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that tracked every movement in the room. Heavy chains wrapped around Velthar's arms and legs. They were made of reinforced titanium, the kind used to anchor space stations. A collar around his neck connected to the back of the cage with more chains. He could barely move. When he shifted his weight, the chains rattled and several students near the front row moved back. Daewon watched quietly. He had been watching Velthar for 3 weeks now, ever since this unit started. The other students looked at the Vrexian and saw a monster. Daewon looked and saw something different. He saw intelligence in those golden eyes. He saw frustration in the way Velthar's claws flexed against the restraints. He saw exhaustion in the way the creature's head sometimes drooped when he thought no one was watching. "Note the muscular structure," Professor Halmix continued, pointing at Velthar with a light pointer. "The Vrexian species evolved on a planet with predators at every level of the food chain. They became the apex through pure hunting ability. Their reaction time is 4 times faster than the galactic average. Their bite force can crush bone. Their claws can pierce armor." Velthar's eyes narrowed as the professor spoke. Daewon noticed. The creature understood every word. That was interesting. The official record said Vrexians had limited comprehension of galactic standard. But Velthar clearly understood. He just wasn't allowed to respond. Next to Daewon, Hana leaned over and whispered, "Doesn't it bother you, being this close to something that could kill everyone in this room?" Daewon shrugged. "He's chained up. Chains can break," Hana said. She was from Seoul, like Daewon, but she had always been more careful, more aware of rules and dangers. Last year, a Class 3 predator broke out of a facility on Titan, killed 16 people before they stopped it. "That was different," Daewon said. "That one was starved and tortured." "It went crazy," Hana frowned. "How is this different?" Daewon didn't answer. He looked back at Velthar. The truth was, he wasn't sure it was different. The cage was too small. The chains were too tight. There were old scars on Velthar's scales, places where the restraints had rubbed the skin raw. The creature's ribs showed through his scales. When had they last fed him properly? Professor Halmix activated a hologram. It showed a Vrexian hunting on their homeworld. The image moved fast, showing the predator chasing down prey with terrifying speed. The class watched in silence. Some students looked scared. Others looked fascinated. A few looked sick. Daewon looked at Velthar instead of the hologram. The Vrexian was watching the image of his own kind with an expression that Daewon recognized. It was longing. It was homesickness. It was the look of someone who had been away from home for too long and didn't know if they would ever return. Their eyes met. Daewon didn't look away. Most species found eye contact with predators threatening. It triggered their flight instincts. But humans were different. Humans were predators too, even if most of the galaxy forgot that. Eye contact for humans meant something else. It meant acknowledgement. It meant respect. Velthar tilted his head slightly. The movement was small, barely noticeable, but Daewon saw it. The creature was curious about him, curious about why this small human didn't look afraid. The lecture continued for another hour. Professor Halmix talked about hunting patterns and pack behavior, and the biological adaptations that made Vrexians so dangerous. He never once talked about their culture or their language or their art. He never mentioned that Vrexians built cities and wrote music and had families. He only talked about them as if they were animals. Dangerous animals that needed to be studied and controlled. When class finally ended, students packed up quickly. No one wanted to stay near the cage longer than necessary. Hana stood and touched Daewon's shoulder. "Coming to lunch?" she asked. "In a minute," Daewon said. "I want to review my notes." Hana looked at him suspiciously. "You always do this. You always stay late in this class." "The material is interesting. The material is terrifying." She shook her head. "Don't stay too long. And don't go near the cage." "I won't," Daewon lied. Hana left with the others. Soon the lecture hall was empty except for Daewon, Professor Halmix, and Velthar. The professor was gathering his materials at the front of the room. He glanced at Daewon. "Student, you should leave. The cleaning crew needs to move the specimen back to holding." "Just finishing my notes, Professor," Daewon said. Halmix nodded and left through the side door. Now it was just Daewon and Velthar. Daewon stood slowly. He walked down the steps toward the demonstration platform. He stopped about 3 meters from the cage. Close enough to see details, far enough to be safe, or at least that was what he told himself. Velthar watched him approach. The creature didn't growl or hiss. He just watched with those intelligent golden eyes. "I know you can understand me," Daewon said quietly. "I have been watching you for weeks. You understand everything." Velthar said nothing. He couldn't speak with the collar around his neck. The collar had a suppression field that prevented vocalization. Another safety measure. Another chain. "This is wrong," Daewon continued. "The way they keep you, the way they talk about you, you are not just a specimen. You are a person." One of Velthar's claws tapped against the floor of the cage. A single deliberate tap. Acknowledgement. Daewon looked at the chains. They were old. He could see rust at some of the joints. The academy was prestigious but underfunded in many departments. They spent money on research and new equipment, but maintenance was contracted out to whoever bid lowest. These chains had probably been here for years. How long until they failed? A noise came from the hallway. The cleaning crew was coming. Daewon stepped back from the cage. "I will see you next class," he said. Velthar's eyes followed him as he left. In those eyes, Daewon saw something that made his chest tight. He saw hope. Small and fragile, but there. Hope that someone finally saw him as more than a monster in chains. Daewon walked out of the lecture hall and into the bright corridors of the academy. His hands were shaking slightly. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because he had just done something dangerous. Maybe it was because he had just made a connection with a creature that could kill him in seconds. Or maybe it was because he knew that those old chains would not hold forever, and when they broke, everything would change. "You are not a monster," Daewon said quietly. The words were in Korean, not Galactic Standard, but tone mattered more than language. "You are just tired, just hurt. I see you." Velthar made a sound. Low and rumbling, it came from deep in his chest. Not a growl, something else, something that sounded almost like relief. The security forces burst through the maintenance door, 10 soldiers in full armor, carrying weapons that crackled with energy. "Nobody move!" the commander shouted. "Predator, target acquired, preparing to neutralize." "No," Daewon shouted back. "Do not shoot." "Student, get away from it now," the commander yelled. "If you shoot, he will attack," Daewon said, keeping his voice steady. "Right now he is calm, but if you threaten him, he will fight, and people will die. People will die if we don't stop it." Velthar's muscles tensed. He heard the weapons charging, felt the threat. His claws extended. His body shifted into a fighting stance. Daewon stood up slowly, very slowly. He kept his hand raised, his eyes locked on Velthar's golden ones. "Please," he said softly, not to the security forces, to Velthar. "Please do not fight them. I know you are angry. I know you have every right to be angry. But if you fight now, they will kill you, and you will die still wearing that collar, still seen as a monster." Velthar's breathing slowed. He looked at Daewon, really looked at him, searching for something. "Lie down," Daewon said. He made a gesture, lowering his hand to indicate the floor. "Show them you are not hunting. Show them you just want to breathe free air for one moment. For a long second, nothing happened. The security commander was shouting orders. Students were crying. Alarms were blaring. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then Velthar moved. He walked past Day-Wan to the space beside his desk. And there, in full view of 200 witnesses and a dozen security cameras, the massive Vrexian predator lay down on the floor. He folded his forearms against his body. He rested his head on the ground, his eyes closed halfway, but Day-Wan could see he was still alert. Still ready to fight if needed, but choosing not to. The room fell silent except for the alarms. Even those seemed quieter now. Everyone stared at the impossible sight. A Class 4 predator, free from all restraints, lying calmly next to a human student. Day-Wan sat back down in his chair. His legs were shaking now. Adrenaline was catching up to him, but he kept his hand extended, resting it on his desk where Velthar could see it. The security commander lowered his weapon slightly. He looked confused, terrified, and maybe just a little bit amazed. "What," he said slowly, "is happening here?" Day-Wan took a breath. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "First contact," he said. "Real first contact." The standoff lasted through the first hour, then the second. Security forces surrounded the lecture hall with enough weapons to level a small building. Outside, students and faculty pressed against windows to watch. News drones hovered in the corridors, broadcasting everything to the entire station. Inside the hall, Day-Wan sat at his desk. Velthar lay beside him, close enough that Day-Wan could feel the heat radiating from the Vrexian's body. Neither of them moved much. Small shifts in position, slow breathing. They existed in a bubble of calm while chaos swirled around them. Professor Halmick stood by the security commander near the door. His stone-like skin had gone pale. "We need to extract the student," he said for the 10th time. The creature could turn violent at any moment. "The human said not to," Commander Tieron replied. He was a Zalvian, built like a boulder with 6 eyes that could see in multiple directions. Right now, all 6 eyes watched Velthar. He said sudden movement would trigger an attack. Then we stun them both and drag the student out. And risk killing them both in the process? Tieron shook his head. "Look at them. Really look. That predator is not hunting. I have seen hunting stances. This is not one." Against the far wall, Hannah clutched her tablet with white knuckles. She had opened a communication line to outside the hall. "Day-Wan," she called out, her voice shaking. "Can you hear me?" "I can hear you," Day-Wan said without turning his head. His eyes stayed on Velthar. "Are you hurt?" "No. Can you walk away, slowly?" "I could," Day-Wan admitted. "But I will not." "Why not?" Hannah's voice broke. "Why are you doing this?" Day-Wan thought about that. Why was he doing this? He could give the easy answer, the safe answer, but Hannah deserved the truth. Everyone watching deserved it. "Because someone needs to," he said simply.
"Look at him, Hannah, really look."
"He is starving. Those scars on his scales are from months of restraints cutting into his skin. His ribs show through his body. When was the last time they fed him properly? When was the last time they treated him like a living being instead of a dangerous object?" Velthar's eyes opened fully at those words. He made a low sound, not threatening, almost questioning. "He did not break free to kill anyone," Day-Wan continued. "He broke free because he could not take one more day of that cage. One more day of being treated like a monster. If you were in his position, what would you do?" Silence answered him. No one had a response to that. Day-Wan slowly reached into his bag. Several security officers tensed, weapons rising, but he just pulled out a water bottle and a protein bar from his lunch. He opened the water and set it on the floor near Velthar. Then he broke the protein bar in half and placed one piece next to the water. "I know it is not much," Day-Wan said quietly in Korean. Then he switched to Galactic Standard. "But it is all I have right now." Velthar stared at the offering. His golden eyes moved from the food to Day-Wan's face and back again. Slowly, carefully, he reached out with one clawed hand. He picked up the half-protein bar with surprising delicacy, brought it to his mouth, ate it in one bite. Then he picked up the water bottle. His claws punctured the plastic slightly, but he managed to drink without crushing it completely. When he finished, he set the empty bottle down gently. Another low sound came from his throat. Different from before, it sounded like gratitude. You see? Daewon called to the security forces. He is not a mindless beast. He is a person. Hungry, tired, scared, just like any of us would be. Commander Tyron stepped forward slightly. Student, I am Commander Tyron. Can you tell me your name? Daewon. From Earth. Daewon. Tyron said the name carefully. I need to understand the situation. You believe the Predator will not attack you? I believe he will only attack if he feels threatened, Daewon corrected. Right now he is calm. He chose to lie down instead of fight. That means something. That means he is choosing peace. Predators do not choose peace, Professor Halmix interrupted. They operate on instinct. Hunt and kill instinct. This could be a stalking behavior, waiting for the right moment to strike. Daewon finally looked away from Velthar. He turned to face the professor. His eyes were cold. You have studied predators for 20 years, Professor, but you have never tried to understand them. There is a difference. Halmix bristled. I am one of the leading experts on... You are an expert on their biology. Daewon cut him off. Something in his voice made even the professor stop talking. You know their muscles and their reflexes and their teeth, but you never asked about their thoughts, their feelings, their culture. You treated Velthar like a specimen in a lab, not like a person who has a name and a home and a life he was stolen from. How do you know his name? Tyron asked sharply. It is on his identification chip, Daewon said. The one they implanted in his neck when they captured him. I looked up his file in the Academy database. Velthar of the Northern Territories, captured during a research expedition 3 years ago. He was a guide, a translator, someone who helped the research team navigate his planet, and they repaid him by putting him in a cage. Murmurs spread through the watching crowd. Some students looked shocked. Others looked ashamed. A few looked angry. Daewon turned back to Velthar. I am sorry, he said softly. I am sorry for what my species allowed to happen to you. I am sorry that we saw your strength and your teeth and decided that made you a monster. We should have known better. Humans are predators too. We should have recognized you as kin. Velthar moved. It was a small movement, just shifting his position slightly. But he moved closer to Daewon, close enough that his massive head rested near Daewon's chair. Outside the hall, the news feeds exploded with activity. The images were being broadcast across the station, across the system, across the galaxy. A human and a Class 4 predator, sitting together in stillness while the galaxy watched and tried to understand. Hours passed. 4 hours 5-6, the station's leaders arrived. Security chiefs from a dozen departments, medical teams on standby, crisis counselors for the traumatized students. And then a new voice came through the communication system. This is Ambassador Tae Yang of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. I am requesting permission to enter the lecture hall. Commander Tyron hesitated. Ambassador, the situation is extremely volatile. I am aware, but that human student in there is one of my people, and I believe I can help. A few minutes later, the door opened. A woman walked in. She was in her 50s with gray in her hair and steady eyes. She wore simple clothing, not a formal uniform. She walked calmly across the room, her footsteps slow and even. She stopped about 2 meters from Daewon and Velthar. She looked at them both. Then she did something that made everyone hold their breath. She sat down on the floor, cross-legged, relaxed, her hands resting on her knees. Hello, she said in Korean. My name is Tae Yang. I am here to help. Daewon felt something release in his chest. Someone understood. Someone from home. Hello, Ambassador. Tae Yang smiled slightly. Then she looked at Velthar. She didn't look afraid. She looked sad. I am sorry for what was done to you, she said in Galactic Standard. On behalf of humanity, I apologize. We pride ourselves on understanding other species, but we failed you. We will do better. Velthar's eyes fixed on her. He made a sound, low and questioning. Yes, Tae Yang said. I mean it. Humans know what it is like to be misunderstood, to be feared for what we are instead of seen for who we are. We are predators like you. We climb to the top of our food chain. We know what it means to hunt and to survive. So we should have understood. We should have done better. She turned to Commander Tyron. The Galactic Council is convening an emergency session. They want to resolve this situation, but more importantly, they need to understand what this situation really is. And what is it? Tyron asked. A choice, Tae Yang said simply. Velthar could have killed dozens of people when he broke free. But he chose not to. He chose to lie down next to the one person who saw him as more than a monster. Now we must choose. Do we respond with violence, or do we respond with wisdom? The lecture hall fell silent again. Outside, millions watched and waited. Inside, a human student, a human ambassador, and a Vrexian predator sat together in the stillness between one moment and the next. The moment when everything would change. The Galactic Council chamber materialized in hologram form above the lecture hall. 50 representatives from 50 different species appeared as translucent figures arranged in a circle. Their images flickered and hummed with energy. At the center, where the speaker's podium stood, Ambassador Taeyang now stood alone. Daewon remained seated with Velthar, but they were visible to all the council members through the security cameras. The chamber was grand even in hologram. High ceilings decorated with symbols from 1,000 worlds. The council members sat in seats designed for their various body types. Some were tall and thin, others were wide and squat. A few floated in specialized environments. All of them looked serious. Council Speaker Vornell, a centaurian with dark purple skin, called the session to order. We convene to address the incident at Galactic Academy Station Kepler 7. A Class 4 predator has escaped containment and is currently unsecured in a populated area. Ambassador Taeyang, you have requested this emergency session. Please explain why we should not immediately neutralize the threat. Taeyang bowed slightly. Because, honored speaker, there is no threat to neutralize. What we have is an opportunity to correct a great injustice and to change how we treat predator species across the galaxy. A murmur ran through the council. Representative Kixall from the Xylari Collective spoke up. With respect, Ambassador, a predator species broke free from its restraints. Predators are dangerous by nature. We must act to protect the other species. Dangerous by nature, Taeyang repeated slowly. Let me ask you something, Representative. Humans are predators. We evolved as hunters. We have forward-facing eyes for tracking prey. We have endurance to chase animals for hours until they collapse. We have teeth designed for tearing meat. Are we dangerous by nature? Kixall hesitated. That is different. Humans are civilized. And how do you know Vrexians are not? Taeyang gestured toward the image of Velthar on the screens. This individual was a guide and translator on his homeworld. He helped researchers. He spoke multiple languages. He had a life and a purpose before he was captured and caged. Does that sound uncivilized to you? Council Speaker Vornell raised a hand for silence. Ambassador, we understand your point. But the fact remains that this predator broke free. He could have caused massive casualties. But he did not, Taeyang said firmly. He broke free in a room with over 200 students. He had every opportunity to attack. Instead, he lay down peacefully next to one human student. That was a choice. A conscious, intelligent choice. We must recognize that. Representative Thulmar from the Zalvian Defense League stood. He was massive, built for war. I have fought Class 4 predators in border conflicts. They are vicious, relentless. This behavior you describe is unusual. Perhaps it is a trap. Then let me provide evidence that it is not. Taeyang pulled up data files that appeared as smaller holograms around her. These are the medical records from Velthar's 3 years in captivity. Malnutrition, untreated infections, broken bones that healed incorrectly, psychological stress markers that exceed safe levels. He was not treated as a sentient being. He was treated as a laboratory animal, and still, when given the chance to lash out, he chose peace. Does that sound like a mindless killer to you? The council chamber fell silent. Several representatives studied the medical files. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked away. Daewon, still sitting in the lecture hall, spoke up. His voice was amplified through the council's communication system. May I speak? Vornell looked surprised. The student wishes to address the council? Yes, Daewon said. He remained seated, aware that standing might alarm Velthar. My name is Daewon. I am the student sitting with Velthar right now. I think I can help you understand. Proceed, Vornell said carefully. Daewon took a breath. On Earth, thousands of years ago, my ancestors encountered wild wolves. The wolves were predators, dangerous. They hunted in packs and could kill humans easily. Other prey species ran from wolves. They feared them, but humans did something different. We did not run. We did not attack. We understood them. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We understood that wolves were social animals like us, that they hunted to survive like we did. that they felt loyalty and love and pain, so we did not try to destroy them. We partnered with them. We gave them food and shelter. They gave us protection and companionship. And over time, those wolves became dogs, humanity's closest friends. Several council members leaned forward, listening intently, but that partnership only worked because we saw wolves as people, not as monsters. We respected them. We learned from them. And they learned from us. Day one looked directly at the holographic cameras. Velthar is not a wolf. He is more intelligent than any wolf ever was. He can speak. He can reason. He can choose. When he broke free, he chose not to hurt anyone. He chose to lie down next to me because I was the only one who treated him with respect. That should tell you everything you need to know. Representative Kixel spoke again. But how can we trust a predator species? How can we know they will not turn on us? How can we trust any species? Daewon countered. Humans have been to war with other humans. The Centaurians fought civil wars that lasted decades. The Xylari Collective has border disputes every year. Violence is not unique to predators. Any species can choose violence. The question is, will we give them a reason to choose peace instead? Ambassador Taeyang nodded. The student speaks wisdom. Let me add this. We have kept predator species in cages and chains for decades. We study them like animals. We deny them rights. We deny them dignity. And then we act surprised when they become violent. But what choice have we given them? She pulled up another file. I have here a proposal. A new protocol for interacting with predator species. It includes proper living conditions, educational opportunities, the chance to serve as ambassadors for their own people, the chance to be seen as equals instead of threats. This is madness, Representative Thulmar roared. You want to give predators freedom? They will use that freedom to hunt us. A new voice entered the chamber. It was filtered through a translator, mechanical and harsh but unmistakably intelligent. I do not want to hunt you. Everyone turned. The voice was coming from Velthar. Someone had managed to deactivate his suppression collar. Now he could speak. His words came slowly, as if he was remembering how to use language after years of forced silence. I am Velthar of the Northern Territories, he continued. I was a guide. I loved my work. I loved meeting new species and learning their languages. When the researchers came to my world, I volunteered to help them. I thought we were making friends. His voice grew quieter. Then they put me in chains. They said it was temporary, for safety, but temporary became permanent. Days became years. I lost my home, my family, my name. I became the specimen, the predator, the threat. Velthar's golden eyes looked directly at the holographic council members. I did not break free to kill. I broke free because I could not be a thing anymore. I had to be a person again, even if only for a moment. And then this human saw me, not as a monster, as a person. He gave me water and food and respect. Small things, but they were the first kindness I had received in 3 years. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Even the ambient hum of technology seemed to hold its breath. You fear me because I am strong, Velthar said. Because I have claws and teeth. But I also have words. I have thoughts. I have hope that the galaxy can be better than this. I broke my chains, yes, but I do not want to break you. I want to stand beside you, as an equal, as a person. Council Speaker Vornell sat back in his seat. He looked tired. This is unprecedented. The council needs time to discuss. With respect, Speaker, Ambassador Taeyang said, we do not have time. Right now, Velthar is calm because one student showed him kindness, but he is still surrounded by weapons, still being treated as a threat. How long before desperation turns to violence? Not because he wants to fight, but because he has no other choice. She stepped closer to the holographic center. The galaxy is watching this moment. Millions of people across hundreds of worlds are seeing this conversation. We can choose to respond with fear and violence as we always have, or we can choose to respond with wisdom and compassion. We can choose to see predators as people. We can choose to be better. Representative Kixall stood. If we do this, if we grant rights to predator species, it will change everything. The entire social structure of the galaxy. Yes, Taeyang said simply. It will, and it is about time. The council deliberated for 6 hours. During that time, Daewon and Velthar remained in the lecture hall. Food was brought in carefully, passed through by medical staff wearing protective gear, water, blankets, basic supplies. The security forces stayed but lowered their weapons. Commander Tyron had ordered them to stand down unless directly threatened. Hana approached slowly during the 3rd hour. She walked carefully, her steps measured. When she reached Daewon's desk, she sat down on the floor beside him. Not as close to Velthar as Daewon was, but close enough to matter. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Daewon looked at her.
For what?
"For being afraid. For not understanding what you were trying to do." She looked at Velthar, who watched her with alert but calm eyes. For seeing a monster instead of a person. Velthar made a low sound. Through his translator, words formed. "Fear is natural. Forgiveness is earned. You are here now. That matters." Hana's eyes filled with tears. "My grandfather told me stories about Earth's old days. When humans first met wolves, he said the bravest thing our ancestors ever did was to see past their fear and reach out their hands. I did not understand until now." More students approached as the hours passed. Not all of them. Many stayed away, still too frightened. But some came. They sat in a rough circle around Daewon and Velthar. They listened as the Vrexian spoke through his translator about his homeworld, about the forests where he grew up, about his family who probably thought he was dead, about the music his people made by tapping their claws in complex rhythms against resonant stones. By the time the council reconvened, the lecture hall had transformed. It was no longer a prison standoff. It was a gathering. A conversation between different species trying to understand each other. Council Speaker Vornel's hologram appeared. His expression was unreadable. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision. By a vote of 32 to 18, the Council has agreed to implement new protocols regarding predator species." Ambassador Tai Yang, who had remained in the lecture hall, stood straighter. "Effective immediately," Vornel continued, "all predator species currently held in research facilities will be evaluated for sentience and sapience. Those found to be intelligent and self-aware will be granted provisional citizenship status in the galactic community. They will have access to legal representation, proper living conditions, and the opportunity to return to their homeworlds if they choose." Murmurs spread through the watching crowds outside. Some sounded approving, others sounded concerned. "Furthermore," Vornel said, "the practice of capturing sapient beings for research purposes without their informed consent is hereby declared illegal. Violations will result in severe penalties for individuals and institutions involved." Professor Halmix, still present in the hall, went very pale. Several other faculty members looked at each other nervously. As for the immediate situation, Vornel looked directly at the camera showing Velthar. "Velthar of the Northern Territories, the Council offers you a formal apology. What was done to you was wrong. We cannot undo 3 years of suffering, but we can offer you choices now. You may return to your homeworld with full transportation and compensation. You may remain in galactic space as a citizen with full rights, or you may accept a position as a cultural ambassador for your species, helping to bridge the gap between predator and prey species." Velthar was quiet for a long moment. His golden eyes closed. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I want to go home. I want to see my family again. But I also want to help others like me. Others who are caged and forgotten. I will be an ambassador if it means no other predator has to suffer as I did." "Then it is decided," Vornel said. "A ship will take you home first. You will have time to heal and reunite with your people. When you are ready, the position will be waiting for you." The speaker paused, then added, "And day 1 of Earth. The Council recognizes your courage and wisdom. You will be offered a position in the newly formed Predator-Prey Relations Department. If you choose to accept." Daewon blinked in surprise. "I am just a student." "You are a bridge," Ambassador Taeyang said with a smile. "You saw what others could not. That makes you exactly what we need." The hologram faded. The emergency session was over. Around the galaxy, news feeds exploded with commentary and debate. Some praised the Council's decision. Others warned of disaster. But the decision was made. The galaxy had changed. Security forces began to stand down and leave. Medical teams came in to examine Velthar properly, to treat his old wounds and assess his health. The Vrexian allowed it, though he kept one eye on Daewon the entire time. Hana stood and stretched. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out what comes next," Daewon said. He was exhausted. His body ached from sitting still for so long. but he felt lighter than he had in months. Change is coming. Real change. Over the following days, the academy transformed. Students who had fled in panic returned to classes, but the curriculum changed. New courses appeared in the catalog. Predator psychology, cross-species communication, ethics in xenobiology. Professor Halmix was removed from his position pending investigation. Several other faculty members resigned. Velthar stayed at the station for 2 weeks while preparations were made for his journey home. During that time, he was moved from the holding cells to proper quarters. Given clothing, given freedom to walk the corridors with an escort. Students who had once fled from him now stopped to talk, to ask questions, to listen to his stories. Daewon spent most of his free time with the Vrexian. They talked about everything. About Earth and Vrexia, about the differences and similarities between their species, about what it meant to be a predator in a galaxy that feared predators. "I have been thinking," Velthar said one evening. They sat in one of the station's observation lounges, watching stars drift past. "About what you said. About humans and wolves, what about it?" Daewon asked. "You said humans partnered with wolves because you understood them. Because you respected them." Velthar's claws tapped gently against the table. "I think humans can understand predators because you remember being prey. Before you became the hunters, you were the hunted. You know what it feels like to be afraid, so you have empathy." Daewon considered that. Maybe. Or maybe we just remember that predator and prey are not so different. Both trying to survive, both deserving of respect. "That is a human perspective," Velthar said. "Most species see only the teeth and the claws. They do not look deeper." "Then we teach them to look deeper," Daewon said simply. The day came when Velthar's transport arrived, a sleek ship designed for long-distance travel. Velthar stood at the docking port, his belongings in a small bag. He looked strange in civilian clothing instead of chains. He looked free. Ambassador Tae Yang was there to see him off. So was Commander Tyron and several faculty members. Hana came along with about 30 other students who had been in the lecture hall that day. Velthar stopped in front of Daewon. "I do not know how to thank you," he said. "You already did," Daewon replied. "You chose peace when you could have chosen violence. You taught everyone watching that predators can be more than their instincts. That is worth more than any thanks." Velthar reached out with one clawed hand. Daewon took it without hesitation. They shook hands, human and Vrexian, predator and predator. "I will return," Velthar said. "When I am ready, and when I do, we will work together to change this galaxy." "I will be waiting," Daewon promised. Velthar boarded the ship. Through the viewport, Daewon watched as it powered up and pulled away from the station. He watched until it jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared among the stars. Hana stood beside him. "Think he will really come back?" "Yes," Daewon said, "he will. And when he does, everything will be different." 1 year later, Daewon walked through the academy gardens with 2 companions. Velthar had returned 6 months earlier, healthy and stronger. He now wore the formal robes of a cultural ambassador. His scales gleamed with good health. His eyes were bright and alert, no longer dimmed by captivity. Beside them walked Hana, who had changed her major to predator-prey relations. She laughed at something Velthar had said, her fear long since replaced by friendship. The gardens were full of students from dozens of species. Some still gave Velthar nervous glances, but most just nodded in greeting. 2 months ago, 3 more predator species had been granted citizenship status. 4 more were being evaluated. The galaxy was learning slowly that predators and prey could coexist. "I received a message from my people," Velthar said as they walked. "They want to open formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. The first time in our history." "That is wonderful," Daewon said. "They asked about you. They want to meet the human who helped free me. Some call you a hero." Daewon shook his head. "I am not a hero. I just did what anyone should do. I saw a person who needed help and I helped." "That is what makes you a hero," Velthar said gently. "You made it look simple. You made it look obvious, and now others see it as obvious too. That is how change happens. One simple act of kindness that shows everyone else what is possible." They reached a bench overlooking a pond. They sat together, 3 young people from 3 different worlds. Behind them, the academy bustled with life and learning. Above them, stars glittered in the darkness of space. And between them, in the quiet conversation of friends, the future was being built. Daewon thought about chains. The physical chains that had held Velthar. The mental chains that had held back the galaxy from seeing predators as people. Chains of fear and prejudice and old habits. Those chains were breaking, not all at once. Not without struggle, but breaking nonetheless. In the end, the chains that broke were not made of metal. They were made of fear. And fear, unlike metal, could be overcome with something simpler than force. It could be overcome with understanding, with empathy, with one person choosing to sit beside another and say, "Without words, you are not alone." The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns, but it was also full of possibilities. And as Daewon sat with his friends in the fading light watching the stars emerge one by one, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. 2 days later, the lecture hall was packed. It was the biggest class of the semester, because Professor Halmix had promised a live demonstration of predator hunting behavior. More than 200 students filled the seats. The air hummed with excitement and nervousness. Daewon sat in his usual spot. Hana was next to him, fidgeting with her tablet. She kept glancing at the demonstration platform where Velthar's cage sat. The Vrexian looked worse than last time. His scales were dull. His movements were slow. Dark circles showed under his golden eyes. "They are pushing him too hard," Daewon muttered. "What?" Hana asked. "Nothing." Professor Halmix entered with 2 assistants. They carried equipment for the demonstration. A hovering drone with cameras, sensors that would measure reaction time and movement speed, a mechanical target that would simulate prey. "Welcome, students," the professor said. His voice boomed through the translation devices. "Today you will witness the hunting reflex in real time. Watch carefully. This is what makes Class 4 predators so dangerous." The assistants began setting up the equipment. One of them approached Velthar's cage with a control tablet. He needed to adjust the chains so Velthar could move enough for the demonstration, but not enough to be truly dangerous. The assistant pressed buttons on his tablet. Motors whirred inside the cage mechanism. One of the chains loosened. Then another. The collar's suppression field dimmed. Velthar's head lifted. His eyes suddenly became more alert. Focused. The assistant pressed more buttons. More chains loosened. This was normal for demonstrations. They had done it before, but something was different this time. Daewon could see it. The way Velthar's muscles tensed, the way his breathing changed, the way his claws extended fully for the first time in weeks. "Professor," one of the assistants said nervously, "the chain tension readings are off. I think we should—" The sound was like thunder. The main anchor chain snapped. The metal screamed as it broke. Velthar moved so fast he was barely visible. One moment he was sitting. The next moment he was standing at full height, 3 meters of pure predator power. His forearms grabbed the remaining chains and pulled. More chains broke. The cage door bent outward. Sparks flew from the control systems. "Lockdown," Professor Halmix shouted. "Emergency lockdown now." Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Emergency barriers started to drop over the exits. But they were slow. The academy had never actually tested them in a real emergency. Panic erupted. Students screamed. Chairs crashed as everyone tried to run at once. A Centaurian student fell and others trampled over them in their rush to escape. The Xylari students, who could move faster than most species, reached the exits first. Others pushed and shoved and clawed at each other. Hana grabbed Daewon's arm hard enough to hurt. "Move, we have to move now." But Daewon didn't move. He sat perfectly still watching Velthar. The Vrexian was free, completely free for the first time in who knew how long. He stood on the demonstration platform, chains hanging broken around him. He could kill everyone in this room. His species could move at speeds that made them nearly impossible to fight. His claws could cut through most materials. His strength was overwhelming, but Velthar didn't attack. He looked at the panicking crowd. His head turned slowly, taking in the chaos. Students fleeing. Professor Halmix backing toward a security panel. The assistants frozen in terror. And then his eyes found Daewon, the one student who wasn't running. "Daewon, please!" Hana pulled harder at his arm. Tears ran down her face. "Please, we have to go." "Wait," Daewon said calmly. "Are you insane?" "It's going to kill us." "No," Daewon said. "He is not." Velthar jumped down from the platform. The impact when he landed shook the floor. Students near the exits screamed louder. Some fainted. Others pressed themselves against the walls. The emergency barriers finally closed, trapping about 50 students inside who hadn't made it out in time. Security alarms continued wailing. Day one could hear boots running in the corridors outside. The security force was coming, but they would take time to arrive. Time to set up their weapons. Time to decide how to handle a loose Class 4 predator. Velthar walked forward. Each step was deliberate, powerful. He moved through the rows of seats, pushing desks aside like they were made of paper. His golden eyes never left Day One. Hana made a sound between a sob and a scream. She let go of Day One's arm and scrambled backward, joining the other students pressed against the far wall. Now Day One was alone in the middle of the room. Velthar came closer. 3 meters away. 2 meters. Close enough that Day One could smell him. A wild smell like rain and earth and something metallic. Close enough to see every scale, every scar, every detail of the creature's face. Day One slowly raised his hand. Palm forward. Finger spread. It was a gesture that meant different things to different species, but the intention was clear. Peace. Acknowledgement. No threat. Velthar stopped. He tilted his head, the same small gesture he had made during their eye contact 2 days ago. His breathing was heavy, not from exertion but from emotion. Day One could see it now. The Vrexian wasn't angry. He was overwhelmed, free after so long in chains, and he didn't know what to do with that freedom.